With BamaCentral.com, I'm Blake Byler, and this is the Extra Point. I am joined here by staff writer Katie Windham, and we're going to be here discussing Alabama's loss to Georgia last night. So, Katie, what were your initial takeaways from the loss?
My initial takeaways were that, and this is not, earth shattering or anything, but that, natives is still just trying to figure out how to motivate this team. Back a couple weeks ago before the first Missouri game, they talked about it being a maturity test. They didn't pass that one. They've talked multiple times throughout this year about playing down to the level of your competition, and it's something they kind of did again last night in the loss to Georgia. Obviously, as people know by now, handing them their first SEC win, and so overall, just not a good loss for this team. So NATO's has got to figure out, ways to motivate this team and get the right players on the floor that want to play and want to win.
Yeah. One of the biggest issues we saw last night was on the defensive end with a lack of rotation ability and a lack of effort, really. So how do you think Alabama can best improve in that area?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what I was just talking about, that he's got to find the people that want to play. Rojas got the start last night for the first time as he was coming back from his injury. He's played a couple games. Last night was his first start. And the players and coaches have talked about, he's a guy who's always going to give all out energy, but he kind of had some mental lapses and mistakes and turnovers last night. For the second game in a row, we saw Britton Johnson out there getting some playing time because when he played the first game against Missouri, NATO said, he knows BJ is going to give 100%. And so I think it goes back to finding just the people that are going to play hard, because I think a lot of people are forgetting Alabama lost kind of the bulk of its team from last year, the leadership, that group that won the SEC tournament, the SEC regular season. And for that group last year, even when shots weren't falling, you knew they could get stops on defense. And last night, especially late in the game, it was almost like you had no confidence in Alabama to be able to get a stop on the defensive end. And that's just something they're still looking for.
Yeah, so if anyone, who do you think is the biggest key player-wise for Alabama going forward?
Yeah, I was talking about this with someone earlier, that there's really on this team, there's not necessarily a go-to scorer like you had in the past with maybe a Colin Sexton or Kyra Lewis. When you need a bucket, you can go to this guy. Shaq can be that at times. Siobhan Quinterly can be that at times, but they're not 100% reliable or not always going to be able to just blow past people to the basket like a Kyra could. And Shaq had a good night shooting in the first half, but I think really the key guy is going to be Keon Ellis going forward. He had 15 points last night, 5 of 11 from the floor, only 1 of 5 from three. The game before, he was 3 of 4 from three. If he can get going from three, he's, since the beginning of the season, Nate has said he's the best two-way player on this team, one of the best in the country. And if he can continue bringing the intensity on the defensive end and help bring that to other guys, and then also pair some offense with it, like the double-digit scoring he's had lately, and just be a leader. This team's desperately looking for a leader on and off the floor. And Nate to say, Keon's not necessarily the most vocal guy, but he has that ability. And so I think he's going to be a key guy going forward, whether Alabama can get this thing turned around or not. And as we all know, they've got a big stretch coming up. And so it's going to be important to find someone that can help them get it turned around.
Yeah, and lastly, talking about a potential turnaround, what do you think it's going to take to see this team really turn it around and hit a potential stride at the end of the season?
Yeah, we've seen at times this year, well, it goes back to the whole they play up or down to their competition, because, obviously we saw Alabama beat Gonzaga. We saw them play it close with Auburn, who's now ranked number 1. So they've beaten a team that's been ranked number 1. They were tied with Auburn with a few minutes left, could have taken the lead late. They've beaten 2 of last year's Final Four teams, and this Saturday with Baylor, it's going to be the 3rd of the 4th that they're going to play this year. And so it's not that, people should be giving up on the season at this point, because we've seen what this team can do. And I think it's really going to come down to what Nate Oates has been saying a lot. Can they play a full 40 minutes of basketball, put together 2 good halves, start strong and finish strong in both halves? And when they do that, they can compete with any team in the country. And really, for weeks now, the 3-point shot really hasn't been falling. Last night, the first half was a little bit better, but then the second half, not so great. And they don't live and die by the threes that we've seen, or else they would be dead this year because they haven't made a ton of threes. But if they can start making threes and clicking on that end, it'll help a lot of things. And I think it'll open up things for other people on offense like JD Davison to get going if they can start making more threes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's going to do it. Thank you again, Katie, for joining me. Once again, I'm Blake Byler, and this is The Extra Point.